In Laboratory Reddit, today's story is...
My millionaire brother stole my wife with a $200 bet, but the mental secret I kept from her made her come back crying to my door 7 months later. There are few things that can cheer up a divorced man as much as receiving a message from his ex-wife regretting having left him. And as if that weren't enough, that she has the audacity to be angry with me for not warning her about the warning signs regarding my brother. Although, to be honest, I only knew one particular sign, and I decided not to mention it to her. I've been waiting for this moment, and I can't feel sorry for them after what they did to me. Didn't she promise my brother to be with him in sickness and in health? Well, let her stay with him. But of course, if she couldn't even respect our marriage vows, why would I expect it to be any different now? Honestly, this publication is just to ask, ironically, if I am wrong for not feeling compassion when her reckless actions led to predictable consequences. You may see me as someone without empathy, but deep down I know I am absolutely right. Besides, I am supposed to help her now that she is in trouble. She wouldn't be in this situation if she hadn't abandoned me in front of everyone for my own brother. I will never forget that moment. But I must tell you the details so that you fully understand what I mean. 7 months ago, my brother was bragging to me that now that he had money, he had power. He was convinced that he could get anything he wanted, even my wife. At the time, we were with friends, and we laughed at his comment as if it were a harmless joke. I assured him that he was dreaming, that my wife was loyal. Then he bet me $200 that he could take her away from me. I was completely sure, 110% sure, that she would laugh in his face. I even considered him a buffoon because he had never been serious. I was convinced that my wife would never leave me for such a fool. Yes, my brother had recently won the lottery and had a lot of money, but our love meant more to us than any amount of money. However, that $200 not only served to demonstrate that I was naive, but also to reveal that my wife was worthless at that moment. That day I learned that you should never say never because everyone has a price. Do you want to know what the price of my wife was? Simply a virtual shopping cart. It didn't take my brother a moment to promise her that the world would be hers if she left me. He assured her that he was serious and that he could even take care of the divorce proceedings. He promised her a life of luxury where she would have everything she wanted. To prove his seriousness, he immediately paid for a $3,000 wish list on her Amazon account. I stood paralyzed, watching this horrific spectacle. How is it possible that my wife would sell herself for a measly $3,000? Of course, I couldn't just take $3,000 out of thin air and give it to her. To get that amount, I would need to work hard, while for my brother it represented a negligible sum with his recent prize. That same night, I had planned to surprise her with some great news about our future, but they took that opportunity away from me. When she told me what had happened, we had a tense conversation in which she couldn't look me in the eye. She laughed nervously and said that my brother was only joking, that he sometimes behaved like a clown. I asked her to cancel his order and to cut off all communication with him. She responded with disdain, saying that I should not try to control her. If I wanted to, I would leave you for your brother, she said coldly. She warned me not to control her because she could leave me and be with a man who treated her better. That night, I went to sleep in the guest room, while she locked herself in our bedroom without saying another word. The next morning, she was gone, and although I sent her numerous messages and tried to call her repeatedly, she never responded. Days later, I woke up and went to make breakfast, only to find the table set and the divorce papers on it. I had to make myself a coffee to read them clearly, because I was still sleepy, although the documents woke me up completely. She was really leaving me for my brother. Most outrageous thing was that a few days later, my brother sent me a message demanding the $200 because he had indeed won that absurd bet. In the end, I signed the divorce papers because there was no point in staying married to a woman like her. If it was money she needed to leave me, then she'd better leave, I thought. Besides, I knew they would be unhappy in their marriage. She had no idea what kind of trouble she was getting into. My brother hid his true nature very well, and who was I to reveal it? So I didn't say anything to my ex-wife. I preferred that she find out for herself. And when I signed the divorce papers, I smiled to myself, because I knew disaster was inevitable. My brother was squandering money wildly without any financial plan. Soon he would be bankrupt, and she would come running back. But not in a million years would I take her back. 7 months later, I had fully recovered from my divorce, and my life couldn't be better. I had finally overcome the humiliation and focused on my business. The day she left me, I wanted to tell her that I had found an investor and that everything was about to change. The money would allow us to expand and grow. Unfortunately for her, she was never there to share in my successes. Now she is desperate, sending me messages, asking me why I didn't warn her about my brother's true nature when we divorced. She claims that if I ever loved her, I would have stopped her from making the worst mistake of her life. She didn't give me many details, but it seems that things have gone terribly wrong and she is trying to leave him. But apparently he is complicating the process, which frightens her. I didn't mention to her that my brother hadn't been the same since our parents died. He had kept it under control for years, but it made his life miserable. He had no prospects and many people, including my ex-wife, considered him a failure. My brother's secret is simple. He suffers from a mental illness that prevents him from functioning normally in society, and he was convinced that money would make his condition worse, especially if he didn't take his medication. My parents made sure he did, but since his death there is no way of knowing. Few people know about his illness because it is not something that is openly discussed. If he stays on his medication, he can appear to be an ordinary person, even if he has certain problems that make everyone see him as a loser. That's why my parents always tried to hide it, to avoid stigmatizing him. Maybe in another publication I'll tell more about this. Update 1. I had an unexpected visitor at my home, and it wasn't rodents or insects, which probably would have been a more pleasant visit. I don't even know how she found out where I live, considering that I moved just a month ago and bought a new house. My business has prospered considerably since she left. I wouldn't say I'm a millionaire, not at all, but my income has tripled since then, and I can afford to buy a house with the help of the bank. Not having to support my ex-wife financially, who is now married to someone else, also helps quite a bit. Yesterday, she turned up on my doorstep and flatly refused to leave without talking to me. She stood in the intense heat for hours, and I eventually went out to sit on my porch drinking iced tea while she still stood there. She had a lot to say, and probably a lot of thirst too, but I had made that drink exclusively for me because it was so hot and I wasn't willing to share. The gist of her speech was this. She deeply regretted leaving me and recognized that she acted rashly. Rash must be the euphemism of the century for what she actually did. She explained that we had had numerous problems in our marriage, and that the argument about the Amazon shopping cart escalated too much. She also confessed that the day she left our house, she went straight to my brother's, and that was the first night they spent together. Having ruined her relationship with me, she went ahead with the divorce, and although she felt guilty, she consoled herself with the thought that she would be well looked after. I listened to all this while noisily drinking my iced tea, deliberately making slurping sounds. But the marriage with my brother was far from what I expected. There were aspects that gradually began to reveal themselves. You can imagine what they are. She explained that he could be sweet one moment and completely unbearable the next. She couldn't understand it, but she tried her best to make him happy. Then, one day, he had an unforgettable episode that showed me a side of him I had never seen before, a side that terrified my ex-wife, that little detail that only his immediate family knew about. I was familiar with that aspect of his personality. I had experienced it before. It was Kurt's other identity, the one he called Charlie. He had been diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder when he was 17. My parents had monitored his health for a long time, making sure he took his medication and maintained healthy habits, such as getting enough sleep. But since his death, there was probably no one to continue that work. Maybe he tried to follow his routine as best he could, but the money, my ex-wife, and his new life probably led him down a path of total lack of control. To give you an idea, on a bad day, Kurt could wake up with a completely different personality and do things he would never normally do. A few hours later, he would return to normal without remembering anything that had happened. The problem is that this personality called Charlie carried out quite reprehensible actions, so much so that he was expelled from high school. When that happened, my parents took him to a specialist where he was diagnosed with this illness. It took several years, but the therapy combined with medication helped to stabilize him and minimize his episodes. They still occurred occasionally, but lately he had managed to stabilize and had not had any episodes. In our old town, people found out and saw him as someone strange who should be locked up. They were very hostile to my brother, so we ended up moving away. When he decided to marry my ex-wife, I was pretty sure Charlie had taken control, but I knew that all this would trigger that part of him again. Any emotional disturbance acts as a trigger for his illness. And as I mentioned, too much happened to him in too short a time that he probably started to lose control. Winning $2 million or getting a wife were not exactly what Kurt needed so suddenly, but that's what he got. Now my ex-wife has discovered the secret, and faces a dilemma. Either she continues with him and tries to help him improve, or she files for an annulment of the marriage, given that my brother did not inform her of his condition. But both options present complications for her. First, she doesn't want to stay with him because she is terrified of him. And second, an annulment of the marriage means that they were never legally married, which also includes giving up any rights to the money. I'm glad it's not my problem, because she's no longer my wife and I'm not interested in getting involved. I just listened to her until I finished my tea. Then I went into my house, because it was already dark, and I turned off the porch lights. I have a thriving business, but I'm not a millionaire either. The next morning, my ex-wife was gone. I'm a bit worried. I live in an area where many people claim to have seen UFOs. I've never seen one, but I wonder if they've taken her away. If they have, they should bring her back soon. They wouldn't have just left her in the middle of nowhere, they would have brought her back a few streets away. Editorial. It seems that some people don't like my sense of humor, because I should take things more seriously. For example, my brother's illness. Well, yes, but his condition does not give him the right to do whatever he wants, and neither does it give my ex-wife the privilege of abandoning me for money. So yes, I'm going to take it with humor. What would be the alternative? Fill my post with laments? And to those who said I shouldn't joke about UFOs, frankly, I don't know what to say. Update 2. The jokes practically write themselves when it comes to my brother and his wife. They're both a real joke, so they inevitably turn out to be very funny people at the moment. All the information I am about to share was obtained completely against my will. A couple of nights after my ex's visit, I was buying some snacks in a shop when my brother confronted me, furious. He publicly accused me of conspiring with his wife because he had found out that she had visited my house. I still don't understand how he found out, but I assured him that I had absolutely nothing to do with her disappearance. Although, just in case, I suggested that he look to the sky. This, of course, in the unlikely event that aliens had taken a liking to her. Naturally, he didn't believe me and claimed that I was getting back at him. He said he should never have considered reconciling with her and that she deserved to be out on the street. Is he only just realizing that? When she abandoned her own brother for money to be with him, didn't he deserve to be out on the street then? Days later, I found out that they were indeed going through a divorce, thanks to her, which I thought was a clever move, and that he had thrown her out of the house. Apparently, she was not happy about being evicted, so she decided to launch a smear campaign against him, revealing to everyone that he suffered from mental disorders and had multiple personalities. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with people asking about my brother. Finally, I had to turn it off to get some peace and quiet. Someone who contacted me said they would go and visit him to check on the situation and then report back to me. When they arrived at his house, they found bottles scattered everywhere and my brother unconscious on the sofa. No, alcohol definitely does not help his condition. The place gave off a nauseating smell, and it looked like he had been subsisting exclusively on takeaway food for several days. He woke him up and ordered him to take a shower. He was completely dazed, but he obeyed. Meanwhile, this person cleaned up what they could and made him a sandwich with the few ingredients they found in the refrigerator. When he finished cleaning up, he met this person in the kitchen, and they talked. The harsh reality was that her life was practically destroyed. If she went ahead with the divorce, she would have absolutely nothing left, because she no longer had enough money to hire a competent lawyer either. She had just discovered that her bank account was overdrawn, which led her to post about it on social media. He managed to get her reported and removed for harassment, but the damage was already done. It is understandable that my ex prefers divorce to annulment, although at the moment there is not much to divide, unless they take away all her remaining assets. Update 3. I have so many things to tell you, including jokes I have played and situations I have discovered. First, I started to approach my ex to ask her about the divorce. She was extremely stressed because even if she managed to finalize it, she probably wouldn't get any financial compensation. I subtly hinted to her that I would be available to her after the divorce. No, I'm not considering reconciling with her. Read on to understand. Shortly afterwards, the bank held an auction of my brother's possessions. I bought his favorite car, the one he used to show off, and in which I later took my ex-wife on a so-called date. I sent him photographs of us in the car, and he just lost it. He cried his eyes out, saying that he didn't need this kind of situation at his lowest point. He explained to me that his life was about to be completely ruined, and that he really needed my help. He begged me to stay away from my ex-wife because, according to him, she had separated us and would only bring more problems. I replied that I didn't care at all. I simply transported my ex-wife from one place to another so that I could take the photograph intended to provoke my brother. After dropping her off at his house, and even though she thought we were on a real date, I blocked her immediately. It was a little joke compared to what they did to me months ago. He called and texted me incessantly, some even begging my forgiveness as a brother. I only advised him to seek professional help because his mental problems would cause him more suffering. And do you know what he replied? That he did not suffer from any mental disorder, that he was only expelled from high school for a simple prank, and when he was taken to the psychologist for his bad behavior, he decided to invent that he heard voices in his head, just to avoid responsibility. It was something he had read and thought it might benefit him, so apparently he recovered and seemed normal. He didn't even take his medication, he just spat it out shortly after pretending to have taken it in front of our parents. At this point, I should tell you that I am tremendously surprised, but I always knew he was a complete idiot. The difference is that before I thought he was an idiot with mental instability, but now he's just an idiot. One who even invented an alternate personality to evade the consequences of his actions. Said, I still maintain that you should seek professional help. You may not have dissociative identity disorder, but you will surely be diagnosed with some other disorder, since you are an obviously disturbed person. Did I go too far with these jokes? Considering his confession, I don't think so. And frankly, I don't care. Update 4. Some people have been asking about the outcome of the divorce between my brother and my ex, and I think it's only fair to inform them as they have patiently followed this whole story so far. Indeed, the divorce has been finalized, and the only ones to benefit have been the lawyers. They have left with full pockets, as I understand it, while there is practically nothing left for them to share. Not even after the auction of all the belongings that my brother had acquired. My ex-wife has also confirmed that he was lying about his supposed illness, and that he was simply behaving despicably towards her. You know, you can dress a pig in silk, but it's still a pig. I wonder if she managed to find someone who treated her well. Marrying for money to someone she barely knew, what a decision. Well, you get what you deserve. Although, in the case of my ex-wife, she got much more than she paid for. It's fascinating how everything ends up returning to its natural balance. My brother has returned to his status as a person without resources, someone who must work hard to earn a living. As for my ex-wife, I can say exactly the same thing, word for word. Taking shortcuts in life never leads to anything positive, and these two people, who were once part of my existence, have learned this in the most effective way possible, with a lesson taught by karma. And do you know what the best part was? The climax of the divorce. They said everything to each other, and don't ask me how I know, but I know. My ex shouting at my brother that she could put several personalities into his head if he dared to come near her. And my brother shouting that even their supposed personalities agreed that she was an unscrupulous opportunist. Was it satisfying? Not really. I would have loved to have been physically present in that place listening to them shouting and insulting each other. I would have liked to have been there, sitting, observing the expressions of disbelief on the lawyers' faces while sipping my iced tea, making as much noise as possible. I know it would have irritated them enormously, but it would have made for a much more entertaining spectacle. For those wondering what kind of car I bought for my brother, it no longer matters. I sold it for a considerable profit on top of the price I paid. So my little joke of going out with his wife didn't cost me anything at all. I was even paid to do it. How sweet it is to return the favor to my brother. Update 5. My brother used a mental illness to evade his responsibilities, minimizing the suffering of people who really suffer from this or any other similar condition, which is an extremely serious matter. But ironically, as fate would have it, he does indeed have two personalities, and in this case, it is hilarious for everyone except him. During the day, he is a man without resources because karma has plunged him into misery. No education, no knowledge of financial administration, and not the minimum intelligence to survive adequately. Whereas at night, he continues to be the same man without resources, but with the difference that he adopts the personality of a security guard in a shopping center. I think that's the most dominant side he has, because he's even developed the characteristic belly of eating too much fast food. And that trait has also manifested itself in the personality he exhibits during the day. And when I say without resources, I don't just mean financially, because he must be paid something for that job. I mean that he lacks mentality, ambition, and any other quality that a person should possess. Although the salary must not be significant either, considering that it is a job that someone has got who has not even finished high school. I know what you're thinking. Perfect time to play a prank on him at work. But although my days of practical jokes are over, There is the small drawback that he works when the shops are closed. No one is allowed access during those hours. Although, if it weren't illegal to infiltrate, I would probably find a way to give him the fright of his life. It must be terrifying to walk those corridors at night, in complete darkness, especially in an area where there have been UFO sightings, and you know that they supposedly took his ex-wife. It would be the perfect joke if he met aliens doing their nighttime shopping. My ex-wife has never wanted to talk about that subject, but maybe because she is busy with more urgent matters. Besides, it must be difficult to explain if they use scanning devices on certain parts of the body. Better to pretend that that night he simply went home, and not the reality that all of us here on Reddit know because we are inveterate conspiracy theorists. It has also been difficult for her to find a job, one that can finance her Amazon wish list. There are few jobs that allow you to pay out $3,000 in one go. While we were still married, she had a job. I wouldn't call it the American dream, but it was a stable job. However, she quit when she thought my brother's money would solve all her life problems. As far as I know, she is still trying to reorganize her life at my ex-in-law's house, because let's not even talk about work. With this last detail, you have probably already guessed who has been leaking information. I know that many here do not usually appreciate in-laws in general, but I think mine deserve a chance. She didn't even have the courage to look them in the eye to explain why she abandoned me to go with my brother. She simply opted for the strategy of not telling them anything. So it was I who had to talk to them. And when I told them, my father-in-law exclaimed, "That scoundrel did what?" And the word wasn't exactly scoundrel, but I know that moderation is strict here. Then they called her while I was present and yelled at her for 15 minutes without interruption. And if the above seemed excessive to you, I don't know if you'll want to continue reading. They told her that giving herself to another man for a simple Amazon shopping cart was not the act of a dignified woman. That instead of using her body to get things, she should have used her brain to find a better job and get it for herself. And they went on like this for a full 15 minutes until her mother declared that she would return on her knees when she had finished taking advantage of other people's money. Maybe she came back humiliated, or maybe not, but she did so with profuse apologies. And that was how they allowed her to stay with them, while she tries to resolve her perpetual employment and housing situation.